So my name is Tobias Scheele. So I'm working at AVEVA. I'm the Senior Vice President for Engineering and parts of the segments. So I have the global responsibility for the engineering portfolio of AVEVA. So the oil and gas industry, in particular the AVEVA portfolio for the oil and gas, is a key element of us. So we are starting at the very beginning of the asset, so of the inception of the asset. Even the biggest refinery, whatever asset will be starting with a blank piece of paper. So it's a so-called mass energy balance. What goes in needs to go out. This is all about precision. This decides if you ever will be profitable with your asset. When you're building it, how expensive it will be to build, how much energy does it consume. Therefore, you need so-called process simulation. First principle mathematical representation of the asset. That's the beginning of the digital thread. So we call the digital twin. Here it all starts from the process, even the biggest refinery. From there on, we are going into the basic engineering, detail engineering, the whole world of 1D, 2D, 3D. So where you know these items, where you see the cool graphics and all these items, where you see the PFDs, where the PNIDs, so technical meaning, but this means where you're creating. How does the asset look like? How big is the distillation tower? How does the heat exchanger look like? What type of material do I need? What type of compressors do I need? So that's where we are in. So that's where I say you're getting closer with the digital twin. So that's again a digital representation of the asset. So once you have done this, you're starting procuring the equipment. You're starting to building the asset, constructing it, and then you're operating it. So AVEVA is very, very strong, key leading oil and gas when it comes to the process simulation, the design of the asset, even the procurement and starting of the construction, and then handing over in operations. That we are saying the next part of the life of the asset starts, of the plant starts. So that's all about operations. So it's about asset performance management, visualization. So how do you make sure that you're squeezing the maximum out of your asset? First, how have you designed it in the best way, most cost efficient? Because you have to live 50 years plus with that thing. So you design it for 5 years, you live 50 years with it. You need to make everything right at the beginning because that defines will you earn money. And these days, even more important, how sustainable is it? Because how much emission do you create? So how much CO2, how much energy does it need? So later on in operations, it's about you have that operating envelope, how do you squeeze it out? How do you do the best of it? That's where we are providing the technologies for it as well. I said key items like asset performance management, particularly in oil and gas supply chain management. So how do you source your raw material? How can I sell it? So how do I funnel it through the asset? How do I make it most cost efficient? These days, again, most sustainable, less CO2 emission. But from there on, the next element what AVEVA has is all data. So that's when you're going into, once you're operating it, you have a digital twin for engineering, you have a digital twin for operations. How do you measure the data? How do you collect and store the data? How do you put intelligence on it? This is all about temperatures, densities, material flows, all these items in the data historian system. So and then putting advanced analytics on top of it, so where you then can start making advanced decisions on it. So and with that decisions, so you can improve your operations. So and then it's all about the visualization of it. So making this information contextualized available, and that's what you're seeing in the back of me. So that's actually what our UOC is doing, Unified Operating Center. So and then on my side left, on your side right, you can see, for example, what is the emission which I'm generating in the asset. SOx, NOx, all that information. But as well other operational data you can see on the right. So that's why you get collected all that information. What we can say is, in particular on the digital twins and on the UOC, we have very advanced customers as well here in the Middle East. So we've embraced that concept. Some have started with it. So and one is a very prominent, you can see as well, was ADNOC. The Panorama was one of the first ones who put UOC on the fleet-wide, on a company-wide asset, a company-wide approach. So others are following, going the same way. It's a different level of maturity. So if you have larger assets, if you have larger operations and more sophisticated, I call it, then you're getting more benefit out of it to understand how does my whole operations work interacted. But even on smaller assets, so it's getting of interest so that you can get that information. You have all sets. You have people, you have companies who are very advanced. So in the region, you have very advanced companies. I just mentioned into another very advanced one is Saudi Aramco. So and then you have the second movers who want to wait to see, okay, is it proven technology? And then they're starting adapting. That's what we're seeing now. The technology is proven since a long time. Now the second wave of adapters start. So, and one of the key items, what you need to have is a digital maturity, an operational maturity, and you need to have a plan how you do it. So the usual items is, first is, you need to have the business plan. So because, I mean, putting something like this is a very nice, appealing item, but it's just a visualization. So visualization is not enough. So what you want to have is, how do you contextualize it? How do I put intelligence on top of it to make business decisions? You want to have business decision makers and as well operations people making, based on this one, decisions. So therefore you need to have that plan, you need to have that digital maturity. You don't need to have all the measurements. Nobody in the world has all measurements. It's just like, how can you take what you have, contextualize it, and where do you say good is good enough? And that's where we're seeing a lot of work needs to be done. So on the customer, on the user side as well, to decide how mature do I want to be with this, how mature am I, so, and how do I want to drive this forward? In particular, when you're going into sustainability, sustainability is a key element. It's like getting into a license to operate in these days. So you need to have sustainability strategy. The first thing for sustainability is first to understand, what am I doing? So key elements to understand is, what are my emissions? What is my energy consumption? What is my footprint? Therefore, you need measurements and intelligence. That's what AVEVA is providing. We're providing the means to collect the measurements. We can contextualize that. We can put calculations behind it. First principle, we can very precise calculate what is it, what you're doing. That's the first step. The next step is optimizing it. So when you're talking about sustainability, it's not just measuring first thing, but then how do you squeeze it? How do I put it down? That's where AVEVA Stack comes in as well. Real-time optimization, looking into avoiding flaring, making sure that asset performance management takes errors before they're happening and you have any major incidences or any type of incidents on your assets. So that's as well in the level of sustainability. So all items we have, all items there, well-established technologies. Where it comes to the next level is design. Designing the new assets or revamping existing assets under the sustainability aspect, CO2 reduction. You can do that. So you can even thinking about, how do I put carbon capture on existing assets, and then sequestration. We have the technologies here as well. They are there, present, can be used. Circular economy, that's a new element. There's a lot of research needs to happen, but this is on the process side. Again, we have the technology for that. So we can provide this. It's now to the customers to make these calculations and see as well, how does that look like? How expensive will this be? So how can I actually design an asset that way? Well, we have technologies there as well. It's a key element of our portfolio.